Good morning. In Ladies Meeting, currently we are doing a series on encountering God, and we're getting ready to go into a new session on quietness. So our lives are busy, hectic, always on the go. We feel anxious or unsure when we're left in silence. Many years ago, I was going through a divorce, and my brain was in a constant state of overwhelm and overdrive, and I was too caught up in myself for God to be king in my life at that time. But I did have a lot of anxiety, and a friend of mine told me to try sensory deprivation therapy. So in Phoenix, where I was living, they have a lot of places that do float therapy, which is essentially you are in a room by yourself, and in that room there is a pod full of about a foot deep of body temperature salt water. So you are going to float. You go in naked if you want to. It is pitch black and completely silent. So you just hear every noise your stomach makes. You can hear your heart beating. Your thoughts just go crazy. So for the first 10 to 15 minutes or so, my brain was just racing. I couldn't calm myself. And the point of this therapy is a full physical and mental reset. The combination of the weightlessness and sensory deprivation lowers your cortisol, quiets the amygdala, which is where the fear receptors in your brain live, shifts your brain into a deep meditative state, triggers happy hormones, and it relieves pain. So it has a lot of good benefits, but you get in there and you are just, I couldn't handle it. All I could think was that I needed to get out. So for the first 10 to 15 minutes or so, I'm just sitting there racing, like I'm ready to leave. And then after that, I did get into that deep meditative state. When I allowed myself to relax and I quieted my mind, I felt like I was sleeping, but I was fully aware. So I knew that I was awake. And I laid there, and I was just in this trance. And when I became fully aware again, I was back to the point where, okay, I need to get out. This is too much. I need to get out. So I got out and I checked my phone, and I had lasted 41 minutes. The sessions are 1 hour long. So I went back a few times after that, and I never lasted longer than 45 minutes. It might have been a different experience if I used that time to sit with God instead of with my own crazy thoughts and everything I was going through in life. But if I took it to God in that time, it might have been different, and I might be willing to go back now and try that again. But sitting in your own thoughts is incredibly hard, even if you're doing it with God. One thing we've started practicing at school that I've brought home with me, we do it during our devotion time. We started a 30-second timer, and we worked our way up to 2 minutes of just sitting silent and reflecting before God. So at home I do between 2 and 5 minutes, which is way better than being in my own head for 45 minutes in a dark pod. But it's still hard. It is very rewarding and clarifying to practice this, though, and God has been working on me for years. In 2016, I attended a ladies' retreat, and the theme was Be Still. It was the first time that I felt God tell me that was something that I needed to do. It resonated so much with me that I got the words tattooed on my body. I have a tattoo that says Be Still. And I've spent the last 10 years trying to do that and failing to do that. I get in God's way a lot. I don't wait for him to answer. I just move forward with the assumption that I already know, that I know what God's going to do, and I've proven myself wrong time and time again. I've found myself in some unhappy places that I'd 100% placed myself in because I refused to be still before God. And I'm very thankful that he doesn't get tired of me, and he just keeps giving me chances to do it his way, the right way. Over the past 2 years, there's been a shift where it feels like, okay, maybe I get it now. I practice it now, and I benefit from it now. And so it is something that I'd like us to practice right now, even in this video, before we really get into the lesson. So I'm going to set a 2-minute timer. If you're listening along, use this time to clear your mind, tell God that you're here to listen, here to hear, and then just be quiet and focus on what God has to say to you. So I'm going to open up this timer on my watch. Can't turn it that far. 2 minutes, and we're just going to close our eyes and we're going to sit in silence. All right, the timer is going off. For me, 2 minutes feels like a very long time. And I'll be honest, I usually don't come away from these quiet moments with some dramatic revelation. More often, they simply quiet my heart and remind me that I'm just here to listen. I found that God often speaks through His Word during the study that follows my quiet time rather than during the silence itself. But that doesn't mean that God can't impress something on our hearts during these quiet moments, because sometimes He does. So just focus on that, and if God brings something to your mind, maybe a scripture, a truth, or just anything to mind during that time of silence, you just want to make sure that you are being aware of that and you're just spending that time actually listening. When I usually start, I thank God and I tell Him, I'm here to listen, I'm here to hear from you. And then I shut up, I quiet my mind, and I'm not even talking to God during that time. I am sitting and just listening. All right, so we are going to turn now to Psalm 46. I'm going to read through the whole thing and then we're going to kind of break it down. So this is in the NIV, Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, and the mountains quake with their surging. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her, she will not fall. God will help her at break of day. Nations are in uproar, kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice, the earth melts. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come and see what the Lord has done, the desolations He has brought on the earth. He makes the war cease and to the ends of the earth. He breaks down the bow, and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. He says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress." So we're going to just sit here in this psalm for this lesson. God is always here to help, providing refuge, security, and peace. God's power is complete, and His ultimate victory is certain. He will not fail to rescue those who love Him. This psalm is a hymn of praise, celebrating deliverance possibly from the Assyrian army when they invaded the land and surrounded Jerusalem during Hezekiah's reign in 2 Kings. So you can go read that story there. Between the years 1527 and 1529, Martin Luther wrote a hymn called "A Mighty Fortress is Our God," and it is based off of this psalm. He was going through some of the most intense and distressing times of his life. He subtitled it "A Hymn of Comfort." He was watching his friends dying around him from the bubonic plague, all while the Holy Roman Empire declared him an outlaw and his writings illegal. He believed that he was living in the end times, but that music was a gift from God used to drive out the devil. He wanted his followers and the future listeners to know that even if our earthly rulers turn against us, God is our unbreachable defense. So we're going to look back at the psalm, and we're going to see how we can apply its words and the practice of being still in our own lives. Like I said, I'm reading out of the NIV, and I also used the Enduring Word Commentary to get me through this study. So I'm going to reread verses 1 through 3, and we're going to start there. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. So this tells me that God is greater than whatever crisis we're facing. Many of the Psalms begin with what the crisis is, but this psalm begins with who God is. God is our safe place to hide, our very present helper. He's not off in the distant, He's not in some faraway place, but He is right here with us. So if God is a real, strong, helpful, safe place, what are we afraid of? Why are we fearing? Why are we anxious? So a question that I had asked myself while I was going through this, that you can think about yourself as well, is when life feels out of control, what truth about God's character helps you trust Him the most? Mine, and I'm just thinking of an answer right now, I didn't pre-think this or write it down, but I think mine is His faithfulness. Like I said, I've tried and failed for over 10 years learning the concept of be still, but He shows up time and time and time again every time that I fail and says, okay, let's try it again. He doesn't disappear. He doesn't, when I make a mistake or I fail, he doesn't go off and say, never mind, this one just can't be solved. He is right here to try again, try again, try again, and he never leaves us. He's always right there with us. So you can think of that question for yourself. When life feels out of control, what truth about God's character helps you trust him the most? We're going to move on to verses 4 through 6. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her, she will not fall. God will help her at break of day. Nations are in uproar, kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice and earth melts. So this talks about a river, the river whose streams make glad the city of God. But Jerusalem didn't have a river like that. The writer was picturing an abundant resource full of life for its people. It wasn't something that maybe they could resonate with because they didn't know. They didn't have that. But rivers can be associated with peace. We're going to turn to Isaiah 48:18. If you had only paid attention to my commands, your peace would have been like a river, your well-being like the waves of the sea. It also talks about river being a picture of peace in Isaiah 66:12. For this is what the Lord says, I will extend peace to her like a river, and the wealth of nations like a flooding stream. You will nurse and be carried on her arm, and dandled on her knees. The blessings and provisions in the city of God are there because God's presence is there. God is not swayed or concerned by the raging around us because his voice is what can silence it all. So the question I have for this one, when you picture a provision from God, what do you see? I'm thinking about that for myself too, because these are not questions that I have spent a lot of time thinking about. They're questions that I knew related to this, but I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time thinking about them before I did the lesson. But when I picture a provision from God, I see stability. I see my life for a long time was just very chaotic, a roller coaster, tons of ups and downs, tons of uncertainty, tons of anxiety. And so when I picture a provision from God, I picture stability. Yours might look completely different than that, because we all have completely different needs. Verse 7, the Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. So the name of God in here, the Lord Almighty, it translates to Yahweh Sabaoth. It means the commander of armies. So this is talking about the earthly armies. He's the commander of the armies that we see here. And it also talks about the armies of heaven. He is in control. The God of Jacob signifies covenant and grace. It shows us that he is the God of all, but he's also a personal God to us as individuals. How does knowing that God is all-powerful and also deeply personal change the way you approach him in prayer? I've approached God most of my life as a friend, as a father, as somebody who just wants to be so close, and I sometimes forget that he is the God of the universe. He is the King of Kings. He is in charge of everything. So I've been spending a lot of time in my prayer life putting God back in the place where he deserves to be, not just coming to him as a friend. It is wonderfully amazing that he wants to be our friend, that he is our Father, and that he treats us so closely and so personally. But I don't want to ever forget the awe and amazement of who God is and everything that he's done. So that would be mine. How does knowing that God is all-powerful and also deeply personal change the way that you approach him in prayer? Verses 8 and 9. Come and see what the Lord has done, the desolations he has brought on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. We see a shift here from who God is to the glory in what he's done. God is mighty enough to end wars. Suffering and destruction are part of our fallen world. They just happen. We experience it, whether it is actual war or whether it's war within ourselves on what's going on with our lives. But God. But God's final victory is inevitable. We show him reverent honor because of his power and his majesty. Since God's people have reason to be glad in distress because of God's presence, how much greater will be their joy when the causes of distress are no more. This was stated by Old Testament scholar William Van Gemeren in his commentary on the Psalms, which is featured in the Expositor's Commentary. So my question here was, looking at your own life, where have you seen God bring victory out of something that seemed hopeless or defeating? For me, this one is easy, the easiest one. I've been married 3 times, which means I've been divorced twice. I told you I do a lot of things on my own. I rush God's timing. I don't wait. I think that I know better. So I got married, got divorced, got married, got divorced, got married. And a couple years ago, I almost got divorced again because marriage is hard. It's hard. It's impossible to do on your own. So with God, putting God in there this time, it was hopeless for me. I was defeated. I felt like it was never gonna be something good for me. I felt like I just wasn't made for marriage. And you know that that's not true. Like, I know how God created me. I know who I am in God. And that just is not true. And so I gave my marriage to God. I can't do this. I want out. I moved into our spare bedroom. I was honestly just ready to be done, and I didn't want to be. I didn't want my life to keep going down that path, repeating the same patterns over and over again. And when I gave it to God, he turned everything around. He definitely brought victory into my own personal life. He brought victory into marriage. He brought victory into how I parented. Just a complete flip when you put God at the center of it. And I thought that I was. But I wasn't. And I learned that. God showed me that too. So that would be mine. So looking at your own life, where have you seen God bring victory out of something that seemed hopeless or defeating? Verse 10, he says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." This is surrender. We believe that God knows what he's doing, that his ways and thoughts are higher and greater than ours. So we have zero, absolutely none, reason to argue or oppose what God says. We know that he is God, and that is enough reason to submit to him. He's not telling us to ignore danger, but to stop striving and stop panicking, and remember who is in control. God's triumph will always prevail. We should take time each day to be still and to exalt God for who he is, what he has done, and what he's going to do, because we know the ending. So in your current season of life, what does being still look like for you? Is God asking you to surrender something, to slow down, or to trust him more deeply? For me, this one was another easy one. God is asking me to slow down. I'm always go, go, go. I'm always needing to be busy. I can't relax. I have anxious energy. When we're traveling, I'm up, I'm bouncing off the wall. I'm packing more, I'm unpacking, I'm packing again. And I am always on the go. Even now, being on summer break from work, I have applied for jobs. And the thing God is doing for me is when I apply for a job, as soon as I hit the submit button or the apply button, I get an email saying, "Thank you for your application. We've moved forward in another direction." This has happened 5 or 6 times since summer started the end of May. I keep applying for jobs, and God keeps saying, "What are you doing? We're slowing down this summer." I have undertaken projects in my home. I started baking bread. I started making laundry soaps just because I get bored and I need something to do with my hands. This is my little craft area at home, and I have projects and projects stacked up back there because I just need something to do all the time. So I've started gardening this summer as well, this spring. So I spend a lot of time outside. I have to water. We water for an hour and a half every day. And so while I'm watering, I take off my shoes. We talked about grounding in ladies' meeting. And I go out to my garden, into my grass, and I walk around and I pray. And I sit outside on my porch swing and I do my Bible study. And I've tried to just make that a daily practice of slowing down for at least the first couple of hours of my day. just getting into the Word, just spending time in prayer, and it definitely makes such a difference. I am still on the go. I'm still very busy. I still like to have something to do, but I'm off of all social media. I don't watch a lot of TV anymore because I spend that time with God instead of filling my head with trash, and I get addicted to it, and so God is definitely telling me to slow down. So the question was, in your current season of life, what does being still look like for you? Is God asking you to surrender something, to slow down, or to trust Him more deeply? The last verse in this chapter of Psalms is verse 11. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. This verse repeats verse 7. So we see it halfway through and then we see it at the end. We have confidence that the same Lord, exalted throughout earth, is with us today. So we leave this psalm with peace and a confidence in God. So when I teach this next week in ladies' meeting, we kind of switched it up. Normally we start with prayer. I'm going to start with the lesson, and then at this point, we're going to go into prayer. So I did that for two reasons. Number one is because I talk really fast. That's why I'm practicing this now. I talk really fast. I don't know how long the lesson will take. I don't want us to be stuck in ladies' meeting for an hour with nothing to do. So normally we pray, then we go into the lesson. This week we're going to go into the lesson, and we're going to spend time in prayer, which is reason number 2. We just did all of this, learning to be still, learning to come before God, learning to exalt God. So we have our needs with each other that we bring up, to intercede on each other's behalfs, to lift each other up in prayer, and we'll do that. And then we have time tonight, or we will have time that night, and we also have time right now, to just spend some time with God. Start your day off, or your end your night, whatever time you're watching this, in prayer with God, letting Him know how awesome and mighty He is, thanking Him for the things that He has done in your life, and just practicing the art of being still.